if there's a group home next door to a house that we're listing, what's our obligation to disclose? None? No obligation. You couldn't.
I think that as far as the disclosure of a group home, if you're representing the seller, I understand that you don't have to. But if you're representing the buyer, then absolutely, if you have knowledge of something that you feel your client needs to know, I think you should disclose it.
Well, if you're representing the seller and you're showing the house to the buyer, aren't they going to know?
Not necessarily. Oh.
Nobody would, a buyer wouldn't know that there are 20 unrelated people living in a house? Oh, okay.
Well, isn't this another case of where we're just a broker? We should just, if you have a question, go to the police department?
Yeah.
I mean, why, that's not our job.
It's, yeah, no, I agree. Okay.
I am a landlord, and I have a historic building where the windows have to remain old. It's going to cost $60,000 to redo the windows, and I can't afford that. So, am I allowed to say no children? No, it's not.
Okay, the question was, Ian is a landlord of an 1800s house that has old windows and therefore lead.
I'm talking about Lloyd. It's not owner-occupied.
Oh, you're talking about Lloyd. And it's not owner-occupied, sorry. And they're not going to replace the windows.
We can't historically, and we can't afford to redo them because it will cost way too much money.
Okay, so the question is, in a non-owner-occupied multi-unit building, is the landlord allowed to say there is, there are lead on these original windows and we cannot have children here?
No. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
Only if you live there can you say that. You just have to, is it enough to disclose that there's lead in the house and leave it up to the tenant whether they become pregnant and have a baby that eats your window?
So as long as I have
insurance issues, even, you know what I mean, like, I don't know that it'd be enough. Could you discriminate? Because it could, I would imagine your insurance company, your homeowner's insurance company would have a real problem with you having, children in the house knowing that you're not complying with the lead safety.
So as long as I have them sign the lead disclosure.
Right. I didn't hear you, what?
As long as I have them sign the lead disclosure, I'm covered?
As long as he has a lead disclosure signed by the future tenant?
Lawyer, landlord, who wrote a really long hold harmless into the lease that was very specific and addressed, you are renting this knowing you have young children and knowing that this is an historic house and there is paint in the windows. Okay. But it was in the lease, it wasn't just the lead disclosure.
Just one more question to do with what Melissa said. The disclosure of the conservation easement, that's not a requirement now?
Huh. Interesting.
Because I had a situation.
There is a question.
But it says maybe people aren't disclosing that, or they're making it specific. It's in that same section, the uses and encroachment section, and they just added specific language about that.
Because that could impact how someone was going to use the property.
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. Okay. Oh boy, we've got more hands. Yes.
They're trying to pass a law saying
yes.
You cannot ask immigration status of a potential tenant.
Yes.
And if you do, what happens? Can they sue the agent?
Well, it hasn't passed yet.
I was talking about Section 8. Can you deny people if they, the sellers if they were to say no? I don't take Section 8. People are calling all the time asking about that.
Well, they're trying to pass a law here that says you can't inquire about government rules. I would have to actually look at the Section 8 law to see what on the federal level.
But the difference is when they ask us.
Yeah.
So in other words, if a potential tenant calls the rental department or calls one of our offices and says, I'm receiving Section 8, will the landlord accept that check?
Well, I think this is saying you can't discriminate on that basis.
Well, I want to thank Sheila and Mike and Jim for joining us today. Thank you. All of the